friends, welcome back to Lost Etiquette. This is episode 2 of my series called My Struggles of Being a Foreign Trained Lawyer in Canada. And today I'm going to talk a bit about fear. I feel like I have experienced a lot of fear throughout my journey in becoming a lawyer, and I continue to experience fear even now as well. And over the years, it has gotten better. I have developed ways to cope up with it, but it's still there. So let's talk about some of my experiences. How did I experience fear? What was I thinking? And if you're able to relate to it, please let me know. One of my biggest fear when I started this journey was that I'm going to be wasting years of my life trying to become a lawyer, and then what if nothing works out? So you'd hear these stories from people where they'd be like, I became a lawyer and I haven't had a job since like 3 or 4 years, or then I didn't have anything to do, and then I sort of started doing something else. So you hear all these stories from different people. Of course, there are good stories too, where people were in their field and they were working for an employer that they really liked. So there was a mix of stories, but at the same time, as human beings, we always tend to focus more on the bad than the good. I mean, sometimes that's what I do. So I had this fear that, okay, well, I'm going to start this. I don't know. There are many steps involved in this process. So first is the NCA exams, then the bar exams, then you have to article for someone. So it's not like you pass one exam and you're done. It's like multiple things that you have to do, and it'll take some time. So my biggest fear, I still remember every single day when I got my NCA assessment and then I was writing these NCA exams, was kind of thinking, am I wasting my time? Am I doing, because you can't really see anything other than writing these exams. You don't know what you're going to get or what you're not going to get. So this was my number one fear, where I constantly thought that, okay, maybe I should just get a job in whatever I get. I do have a master's, maybe get into something else, and then just live my life. I had friends at the time who were traveling, getting married, having fun, and here I was not having any money and then focusing on these exams and thinking about a bigger picture that I had no idea if it was ever going to work out. But so that was my biggest fear. Just to sort of restate it, is that what if I spend my time and not get anything out of it? So let's talk about a few other fears, and then in the end, I will sort of talk about how I overcame my fears, and did this really matter in the end? Second fear, I would say, would be fear of failing exams and fear of rejection. So again, you're preparing for NC exams on your own. There's not a lot of information out there, at least at the time that I was writing these exams. There wasn't a lot of things that I could watch, or there weren't a lot of people that were talking about it. Now you have these networks, you have these conferences, but back in the day, there wasn't a lot of things that you could sort of look at. And so I would constantly think that, what if I fail these exams? What if, I pass everything, I pass the bar exam, and never get an articling position? And if you never get an articling position, then, why did I write all of these exams? And again, you hear these stories from people, and I have been hearing these stories from people, where it's like, oh, I couldn't find articling for, 10 months or 12 months, and I wasted another year or two, and I would just be like, oh my God, Again, the same concept. If people aren't getting what they think that they're going to, so how am I going to get it? And this was constantly, over the years, I felt that, what if I fail these exams? What if I never pass them? What if I keep trying and I never actually pass the exams and never get to the next stage? So then where do I go from here? So yeah, this is something that I think we all experience when we start something new, but specifically for the NCA process, this was one of my fears, is rejection and failing, just like any other human being. I'm just going to touch upon one more and then want to talk about what I think about it now, because now I am on the other end, and I will talk about, okay, well, what do I think about it now? But so one of the other fears that I experienced was fear of speaking up. When you're new in a country and you don't really know much and you don't have a lot of experience, there's always this fear that I'm going to say something wrong. Or someone's going to find out that I'm not that smart enough. Or someone's going to find out that, I don't know what I'm talking about. Or this person is still struggling. Or, this person is trying to become a lawyer but really doesn't know much. So oftentimes I would hesitate to speak up and say things that I really should have in the past. And there were times in some of the experience that I had at some of my jobs or sometimes at school where I feel like I did not speak up because because of this fear that I'm going to say something wrong. Because when you're new, you don't really trust yourself too much, and you're always doubting. And as I said in my previous episode, that self-doubt was always there. So when you're doubting yourself, and then you don't really know, and then you have this fear of speaking up, and so I did that. And also to keep in mind, when I moved to Canada, like when you're super young and you don't have a lot of experience, I think you can relate to it when you can relate to what I'm saying if you also move at that age. Sometimes people move at an older age where they really know what they want and they're more settled in themselves, so maybe they don't experience this, but I did experience fear of speaking up. How do you overcome this feeling? How do you overcome feeling fearful? Now, as I get older and as I gain more experience, and now I've been in Canada for over 12 years now, I started to realize that fear comes from something that's unknown, something that you've never done before. So it's not a representation of how smart you are or how capable you are. It's human reaction to something that you've never experienced before. So to my point that when I started this journey, I had this fear that I'm gonna waste so many years of my life. It came from a point because I'd never done this before. I never knew what it would feel or what it would be like. So until unless I went through this journey, I was never gonna be able to know what's gonna happen. So it was okay to feel fearful. And at the time, I didn't understand it. I just didn't understand it. But one of the things that I did, and something that we're taught just as, growing up, sometimes you have to put your head down and do things. And so at the time, this is what I told myself is that, okay, well, I have a plan. Let's put my head down and do it and see what happens. But now that I reflect back on it, I think that was a good strategy because fear came from a place of unknown. And it would only disappear once I actually am past it and once I experience these things. So now I think that I don't think I wasted my time. I don't think I wasted years of my life. It was something that I took a chance, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay as long as you are taking that chance. So that's what I would say. In terms of fear of rejection or failing the exam, as well as fear of speaking up, this is completely normal, and I still experience it sometimes, like fear of rejection. Any new project, anything that I'm doing that I'm unfamiliar with, I will still experience fear. But one of the things that I realize now is that you have to do things even if you're scared. Sometimes you're not going to know. You're not going to know. You're not going to know the exact pathway. You're not going to know what tomorrow is going to look like. You may fail, you may not. But is it worth taking a chance? Is it worth taking that big step? That's what I would like you to question. I still experience fear sometimes. If I am, for those of you who don't know, I'm also a Canadian immigration lawyer. Sometimes when I do strategy for clients, some strategies that I've never done before, I am a little bit scared. But sometimes you do it and you weigh the risks and you tell the client and then you go with it. So I think it's worth trying things. I think it's worth taking that chance if you really feel like that's what you want to do, and only you know what you want to do. Deep down in your heart, we all know where we're going, what we want, what our next steps are going to look like. But sometimes we don't know a clear path, but it's worth taking that risk, in my opinion. Sometimes you see things that are just not going to work for you. It's okay to stop then. For example, in this journey of becoming a lawyer, some people may experience financial issues. Some people may experience other, if you have a family, if you have kids, you have bills to pay. You have to commit your time to something else. So, going through this process, which is going to take a hit on financial as well as other things, it may not be something that you can do, and that's okay. So figuring out where you're standing and moving forward from there. Experiencing fear in your journey, know that it's normal and other people have experienced it too. Sometimes people just pretend to, sometimes people have this image where they pretend like nothing matters, or I don't care, or I've always had things, I've always had the courage to do things, but the truth is, at least this is what I think, if you really understand yourself and your emotions, this is completely normal.